Yeah, 1 year still. I expect you to have more than that.
Oh, yeah. We're excited. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you made the jump.
Oh, yeah. It'll be fun. Well, I was just graduating in May, and then she's going.
This is the closest I can get.
Boring. And this is yeah, you appreciate your own work.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
we actually have so strange to me.
Oh, you did a
And she'll be older now.
Funny that, yeah. Okay. Oh, no, yeah. I actually had a proper membership before that. are gonna have back strips or the mesh next to
Oh my gosh,
it.
they were talking about it. I didn't see it.
Splitters are good.
Worst thing, actually, like, you never know what you're gonna like have to go viral and then like do this and then
You made a career out of it.
Right here, or am I? Over this way.
Oh, it's a whole wind, it's a winding, it's okay.
Okay.
That's all right.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. House Republicans stand ready to get to work in what will be the start of another tied legislative session. Last session, House Republicans did work extremely hard to make life better for Minnesotans, and we're back this session to build on those wins, and you'll hear a little bit more about those. Our priorities this year are and remain the same as last year. We're here to stop the fraud. We want to make Minnesota affordable, safe, and competitive. We're looking to reduce the mandates and raise standards in education and ensure that Minnesota tax dollars help the Minnesotans that they're meant to help. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leader Harry Niska to share a little bit more about some of the work that we're going to be doing.
House Republicans have made stopping fraud a priority for this biennium, and we're going to keep working on that this year. We have House File 1, which is the OIG bill, having an independent inspector general. That's going to be a top priority. And remember, a similar bill passed the Senate 60-7, but Democrats in the House blocked it from moving forward. We're going to continue working on that. We're also introducing the Fraud Isn't Free Act, which creates consequences for agencies and commissioners who allow fraud to occur unchecked. And we're also introducing a bill to create statutory guidelines for programs at high risk of fraud. The departments that enabled the fraud cannot be trusted to fix the problem themselves, and we'll have legislation about that. Just as a reminder, the OLA report on fraud just recently saw employees backdating and making up documentation, something Judy Randall hadn't seen in over 30 years with the OLA's office. And as far as we know, no one has faced consequences for that. We'll also be focusing on making Minnesota affordable, and to make Minnesota affordable, we're introducing bills to bring down healthcare costs by establishing a permanent reinsurance program and requiring cost defrayal for any new healthcare mandates. We have a bill to establish a commission to tell us why property tax increases are continuing to happen, and we want to conform with federal policy to cut taxes on tips, and overtime, so Minnesotans can keep more of their hard-earned money. Minnesotans have had a hard couple of years, with Democrats spending an entire $18 billion surplus and raising taxes by another $10 billion, still driving us into a deficit. House Republicans are here to reverse that damage to family budgets. Additionally, we're going to focus on making Minnesota safe. To make Minnesota safe, we have bills to hold criminals accountable by requiring repeat offenders to serve their sentences, and a bill to increase sentences for repeat gun criminals. We're also working on a bill for judicial accountability and transparency. We've had a troubling run of judges allowing violent criminals out to reoffend without more than a slap on the wrist. That needs to stop, and Republicans are going to work on that to prevent Minnesotans from continuing to suffer because of that judicial activism. We also have a school safety bill that we're working on that will include public schools and safe schools revenue, non-public schools and safe school revenue, expand flexibility on funding for school safety personnel, and give one-time grants for facility improvements. Our students, teachers, and school staff deserve a safe learning environment, and our school safety plan will give concrete steps to make that happen.
The next area is specifically in education, where we talk about raising standards and reducing mandates. So in education, we plan to pass a bill so that Minnesota students can fully benefit from new federal education choice tax credits. Fewer than half of our students in the state of Minnesota can read at grade level. That is unacceptable. Our graduation rates are abysmal. So parents should be able to choose the best school for their students without being penalized at tax time. We also need to make sure that our reading, science, and math curriculum are effective. It's really time in Minnesota to return to basic academic fundamentals. Schools need to be teaching our students how to think, not what to think. The next area is we're going to make Minnesota competitive. House Republicans want to protect and expand Minnesota's mining industry by implementing permitting reform and other changes to support the industry. We want to conform our tax code to support Minnesota's job creators, and conforming to federal research and development credits, business expensing modifications, and other changes that allow businesses and employees to thrive in Minnesota are some of the things that you're going to see. Finally, ending that nuclear moratorium will make our energy more affordable and make Minnesota more attractive to businesses that want to make Minnesota their home. The last specific area that we want to talk to you about this afternoon is Minnesota tax dollars for Minnesotans. We have bills that will ensure that Minnesota tax dollars will benefit Minnesotans, like modifying the North Star Promise program so that only legal Minnesotans are eligible, and conforming to federal law with regards to work requirements and more frequent eligibility checks for Medicaid. It makes sense to require that those on public programs who are able to work do that, and those who are receiving tax dollars are actually eligible. That's an overarching look at the program that we have, a continuation from last year, and with that, we will stand for questions.
You may have heard Democrats this morning had their press conference and one issue was addressed, and it was immigration action. You haven't talked about immigration. Talk to us because there is impact statewide economically. The governor has talked about an economic package. I've heard from Republican business owners who have been interested in maybe a tax holiday. Is there any bipartisan legislation that you could see supporting?
So again, with the businesses that have been impacted over the last 6 weeks or so, if you remember back in January, you had leaders, city and state leaders, calling on businesses to shut down for a day and to strike. That is a choice. Not all businesses chose to do that. Not all businesses were negatively impacted, but it was a choice that was made. If the governor and other legislators are going to bring bills forward, of course, those bills are going to be introduced, referred to committee, and heard in the committees. Right now, as Republicans, we are talking overarching, as you saw on this plan here, ways that are going to make things more affordable for all Minnesotans across the board. And so those are the areas that we're focusing on.
Madam Speaker, does it go without saying there will be no tax increases given how difficult it is to keep track of the tax dollars that are coming in now?
You know, we have been overtaxed. As you have heard just a little while ago from Leader Niska, as we have been talking about, we had an $18 billion surplus in 2023 that was completely spent, and all of our taxes and fees were raised another $10 billion. We're headed toward a deficit. And that was a Democrat-created deficit back in 23 and 24. We are trying to dig our way out of it, but tax increases on Minnesotans are off the table.
This is the governor's last session. What are you anticipating from him?
You know, I think the governor has mentioned some of the economic losses that, you know, his perspective and what he wants to do. But to be honest with you, I have not heard or talked to the governor since September 30th. I'm not sure.
Madam Speaker, are you going to see if there's some kind of a bailout package for businesses? Are you going to see it as statewide, Republican districts, Democrat districts, or is it going to be seen as a bailout for Minneapolis?
Well, I think what we should be focused on, what we've talked about, is making Minnesota competitive. We've seen a lot of damage to businesses as a result of the Governor Walz's policies and Democrat policies over the last several years. It's interesting that, again, we're seeing a continuation of what really we saw last year, a Trump deflection strategy, trying to blame President Trump for all the bad effects of Democrat policies. Democrat policies have made it really hard for businesses to compete in the state, and we should be focused on trying to fix that and make Minnesota competitive going forward. But the idea that we're going to do some sort of bailout instead of trying to figure out how to fix our business environment, I don't think that's something that there's going to be bipartisan support for.
Representative Reimer, hi. You had a bill last session about requiring local governments to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. It didn't make it out of committee. Democrats were not amenable to it, but I'm wondering would you make changes that you think that they might agree to and try to bring that idea back this session?
Yeah, before he said, I just want to add that we offered that as an amendment on the House floor, and Democrats blocked it on a party line vote. So it was not just blocked in committee, it was blocked by Democrats on the floor. It would have created a framework for cooperation that would have prevented a lot of the problems that we've seen in Minnesota over the last several weeks. And Democrats prevented it from happening, but certainly Representative Reimer.
Yeah, so this session did introduce House File 16 last session, as you referenced, and I think that would have streamlined and created a framework for local law enforcement cooperation with federal immigration authorities. That bill saw a number of changes through the committee process, and certainly I'm open, I think our caucus is open to all sorts of changes, but the root of what we saw this past winter with Operation Metro Surge, we can disagree about maybe some of the tactic that was used, but I think at the core of the issue was that we did have local municipalities who were being overtly uncooperative with federal immigration authorities. I think my bill would have prevented, quite frankly, some of the chaos that we saw this past winter. So yes, do plan on getting a committee hearing on that bill. We'll see what the final form looks like, but hopefully we can all get on the same page about what our responsibility in that process.
Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy has talked about gun bills that didn't happen because in the special session they didn't happen, and also a state law against ICE agents wearing masks, making schools safe zones from ICE. You can take those in whatever order you'd like.
Sure, so there's obviously huge challenges in the state of Minnesota trying to regulate what federal law enforcement agents do. That other states have tried that and have had court challenges as a result of that. Same with doing things where we're trying to regulate guns. Virtually every bill that we've seen come forward from Democrats where they're trying to regulate weapons is something that's likely to get struck down on constitutional grounds. So we are definitely open to all kinds of discussions about school safety. We have school safety proposals we think would have bipartisan support. We're open to discussions about ways to protect Minnesotans' constitutional rights, but we should not be going down the road of things that are not going to work legally or as a policy matter. And most of the things we've seen from Democrats on both of those topics fall into that category of really political posturing that's not going to solve any actual problem.
One quick follow-up on election reform. Is there, at the federal level, there's a lot of talk about making elections, adding more integrity to elections. Anything in election law that you're looking at for this year?
Well, the Republican caucus has always been in favor of things like voter ID, of provisional ballots, of making sure that Minnesota actually complies with the federal cleaning up our voter rolls. And we've had a lot of national discussion around a lot of those problems. I think you're going to see more discussion about the problem specifically with Minnesota's voter rolls and why Steve Simon and Keith Ellison are fighting so hard to prevent the federal government from helping us to clean up our voter roll. There's been some news about that, about the Hennepin County voter rolls. I think we can expect some further discussion about that, but that's absolutely going to continue to be a priority that we're going to talk about.
What about bonding bill? Typically this is a bonding year. I haven't heard anyone talking bonding. Is it unlikely to happen?
So bonding is something that we will be discussing. Our chairs have been out doing their work this entire year, looking at projects. We know there were things that didn't get over the finish line. If you remember last year, we did pass a very good bonding bill, $700 million, just over $6 million of cash. Roads, wastewater treatment, bridges, those kind of infrastructure statewide are what are important. As far as how it is going to go this year, we have our Ways and Means co-chair here, Representative Torkelson. Our state does not have money right now, and that is a choice that was made over time. And so that has to be considered. There are projects that definitely do need to be done. Bonding will be discussed and go forward, but there are no promises at this point.
Any appetite for sports betting?
There has been no discussions that have really risen to that leadership level or anything bubbling up on sports betting right now.
Madam Speaker, how are you going to navigate your two hats here, governor candidate and Speaker of the House?
I have never had a problem balancing my workload, and just like everyone else is running for re-election for other things, I will be able to fully be speaker and do other work on the campaign
Do
side.
you have some specific plan or some strategy?
I am completely focused on being Speaker of the House and getting the work done for the people of Minnesota and the legislature.
The 2024 omnibus bill is in court. It's in front of the appeals court at the end of March.
Take that.
Judge might rule on that. The bill's kind of been on blast by the district court judge. Are you going to change your tactics on how long bills get this session?
I will take
Oh, there is no world in which the House Republican caucus would support anything like that 2024 omnibus bill. We've never supported anything like that. That's frankly unprecedented in the recent history. And there was nothing you saw last year that was anything like that, and there's nothing that you're going to see this year that's anything like that either.
The Minnesota Medical Association put out a list of 5 priorities last year, and I just want to talk about each of them. One of them is to minimize the impact of federal Medicaid changes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. They say $1.4 billion in lost Medicaid funding over the next 4 years. Wondering if there's anything you guys are looking to doing about that. They want to increase childhood vaccination rates, possibly by removing the personal beliefs exemption. I think you've already addressed firearms, and they support a statewide ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And they want to ensure that there's a human doctor involved in denials by health insurance companies. You can address any of those.
So with the reporting from Minnesota Medical Association, what has come out there, if there are bills that people want to have dropped and heard in committee on any of those topics, we will be looking at them. We are not interested in any type of vaccine mandate. But I will also tell you the impact for the Medicaid dollars and how that affects our state will also be a part of our discussions as we go forward. So I would definitely say stay tuned on that one.
Madam Speaker, with the gavel still going back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, is it going to be sort of a split screen of priorities for one side and then the other, or will you work together on what comes up?
I think last year was a perfect example of how the voters sent us with a requirement to work together, Democrats and Republicans equally, with the exception of the fraud committee that has the Republican chair and a Republican majority. All of our committees will be working together with our co-chairs. They have built those relationships over the last year. There are definitely going to be priorities on both sides of the aisle, and those can be heard when the gavel does switch. But when it comes right down to it, we need to have bipartisan votes to move bills through the committees and get the work done for Minnesotans. I don't see a difference in how we choose to work together.
Representative Nash, you stood up here with Democrats and Republicans alike last year, maybe the year before that, about affordable housing. Big, huge package came down, thought it could be the year. It wasn't the year for that. Can you talk about what you think is possible on that issue if you're talking about affordability? Many people can't afford homes.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think what you'll see is there are a number of things that we've been working on in the interim regarding things like the aesthetic mandate that we've pushed that I've carried for many years. I think we've finally got us to a point with the League of Minnesota Cities that they recognize that that is a worthwhile piece of legislation. But furthermore, you talk about the medical profession. I was talking to various other groups that work in the medical profession. Many of their people that they have working at hospitals can't afford to live in the cities that they perform that medical treatment in. It is now, I believe, time for us to take seriously the need to have people who want to work in either a school or a hospital or wherever to live in the city that they're able to work in. That's going to be predicated on coming up with affordable housing. So we're not looking to have as wide sweeping a bill, but knowing where and what we need to get done from a highest priority perspective.
Regarding immigration, recent polling shows that Minnesotans were not in favor of what happened during Operation Metro Surge. So why not work with Democrats to come to some sort of bipartisan solution on some sort of immigration reform to ensure that something doesn't happen like this again?
Yeah, so from a state policy perspective, what the polls say is that Minnesotans want our state and local law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. What happened with Operation Metro Surge is over, but what we can do at a state level is to pass something like House File 16. And I 100% agree with Representative Reimer that we are perfectly happy and willing to work with Democrats on figuring out ways to have that cooperation. Sheriff Witt just said she would like to see some kind of a statewide standard of cooperation. Absolutely, let's pass a bill that says here's how to make it easier for counties to enter into cooperation agreements with the federal government. That's what Florida, every county has it. Only a few counties in Minnesota have those kind of agreements. And making sure that there is a clear legal framework that allows for when criminals get picked up, when illegal immigrants get picked up for some kind of criminal charge, like the person in Hennepin County that was picked up for 50 pounds of meth, that they're not just turned out into the street or turned out into the lobby of the Hennepin County Courthouse where they had to be arrested by ICE in the lobby of the Hennepin County Courthouse. When someone that is suspected of a crime but is an illegal immigrant gets picked up, the safest way for Minnesotans to deal with that and the least costly from both a federal law enforcement and a state law enforcement perspective, the best way for that to transfer to happen is inside of a jail. So we would love to work with Democrats on ways to make sure that those criminal illegal immigrants get transferred in that kind of a safe circumstance instead of being out in the community where federal immigration enforcement has to go surveil them, try to take them down, try to apprehend them out in the public.
Representative Niska, back to tax conformity, what are the chances that would pass this year? And if it did pass, would that likely be for subsequent tax years, too late for this year?
Well, Republicans are absolutely in favor of a swift tax conformity bill to cover anything from, the aligning our tax code with cuts on tips and taxes on tips and overtime. But we especially want to see a tax conformity bill that opens up to Minnesota students the scholarship tax credits that were enabled by the federal law changes. That wouldn't cost Minnesota anything. It would simply create opportunities for Minnesota students that otherwise are just going to go to other states. Minnesota taxpayers are going to be able to get those scholarship tax credits. They're going to be able to donate those to scholarship granting organizations. But we have to change Minnesota law in order to allow Minnesota students to benefit from that. So,
do you see much of a chance of it passing this year, or is it difficult? Tax conformity always seems to be difficult.
It always seems to be difficult. We have votes on our side of the aisle for it. The question is whether Democrats are going to be willing to work with us on that.
Do you know how much it would impact the budget? Obviously, if there was some sort of tax reduction, there'd be fewer receipts coming into the state at a time when we're facing a deficit.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on the other pieces. The scholarship granting organization fix. It's something that governor could do unilaterally. He wouldn't actually need us to do anything legislatively. That's not going to cost Minnesota anything. It's just going to cost Minnesota students if we choose not to opt into that.
Are you worried about the February forecast, those numbers being accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
And being able to budget?
I believe February forecast is going to give us an accurate depiction of where we are as a state. I am concerned. When we've talked about the costs and we've talked about where we've been just a few short years ago, and we did make a reduction in our spending this year to try to take a bite out of that impending deficit that we know is down the road. But I am very concerned. Over the years, Minnesota Management and Budget has said the legislature needs to exercise caution in decisions. That was fairly ignored in 23 and 24, and we are now living the consequences of that as a state. Any other questions?
Anybody have a city with a proposed sales tax, local sales tax?
I'm not sure if we do at this point, but I would say stay tuned because our cities are working with their legislators if they need to bring something forward.
Leader Stevenson this morning, when talking about immigration, kind of seemed to write off you, frankly, GOP leaders as saying they're not going to go with this on this immigration bill, but we're hoping that some rank and file Republicans will. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, and also conversely, do you have any hope that Leader Stevenson will help you out on some of your cooperation bills?
I'll just mention, and then if Leader Niska would like to step in, what I'll mention is you saw in this body that Speaker Emerita Hortman and I worked very well together this last year. You'll see tomorrow a very meaningful memorial and bringing together Democrats and Republicans in the House chamber along with our Senate colleagues. What I am hopeful for is that even though much has changed in our state, that Leader Stevenson and I will continue on that legacy of good work being done in a tie. He had a front row seat when we negotiated toward the end of session. And so I am very hopeful that even though we may see different issues differently, this can be a year that we do choose to extend grace and to either agreeably disagree or find compromise where we can. And so I have no questions of whether or not that is possible, but it's going to take 134 legislators in the chamber to want to make that work from the committee process all the way through onto the House floor. Did you want to add anything?
You know, yesterday in the Senate, or last week in the U.S. Senate, both Commissioner Schnell and Attorney General Ellison said that they are for, helping federal immigration enforcement enforce immigration laws against those who are picked up for crime. So I'm hopeful that, I would hope that House Democrats and Senate Democrats will step up. I think they're going to be pulled by their base in a very different direction. So we're going to see whether they're actually for helping. If they're for the rule of law, they should be for the rule of, including federal immigration law, unless and until it changes. I think, I suspect that a lot of them really don't support federal immigration enforcement because they want federal immigration law to change, and certainly a lot of their activist base is going to make it difficult for them to work with us on actually enforcing immigration law. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.